Greetings. My name is Ben, aka Downsize It, and today I am very pleased to be joined by a special guest that I'm sure most of you know and have probably followed before, and that is Crabbok, whose real name is Tim.
Hello there.
Yes, and thank you for coming onto the channel and
Absolutely.
to this interview.
Thank you for having me. It's been an interesting it's been an interesting week or so, and so it's I'm sure we'll have a lot to talk about. Thanks for having me.
Yes, absolutely. And to get us started, I find it hard to believe that anybody that subscribed to my channel doesn't know who you are. But just in case, and also just for my own benefit, because I don't know, why don't you give us a little background about your start in the whole YouTube community?
Sure. So a lot of people don't know this, but basically a couple of years ago, before Disney bought the Star Wars license, George Lucas came up to me and he actually asked me, hey, look, I need somebody to start talking about these games. And I said, I can't do it. So he got Mark Hamill and Harrison Ford to both come over. Yeah, they threw me a surprise party, and it really wasn't even my birthday. And they threw me a couple.
Was Carrie Fisher there?
Oh yeah, always.
Oh,
she was living with us at the time.
I imagine she's the life of the party among all of them.
She is so boring. No,
Really?
I'm just kidding. No. She of course, if that story were real, she would have been absolutely the highlight of all of it.
Yes.
No, the real story is a lot more boring, but it kind of, I don't know, it started from playing video games and moving to Orlando, and as an adult, I think it's harder to make friends, and video games isn't really what it was when we were younger. I remember like gaming for me, growing up, like as a teenager, it was a lot more about couch co-op and like Star Fox 64 and Golden.
Oh yeah.
And sitting around with your buddies and heck, going back to like Mario and Luigi taking turns or playing together, and like having that camaraderie together and that playing. It was always better to play with a friend than to play by yourself.
Tecmo Bowl for me back then.
Tecmo Bowl, oh absolutely, yeah. I remember that.
That was my big one.
Oh yeah, but yeah, so like all of that was like a big informed me growing up, and so I really loved multiplayer games, and just whether or not you won or lost, but just playing together was great.
Right.
And so then becoming an adult, moving to a new town, and not seeing people, not meeting as many people, I had gotten into MMOs, and I was playing EverQuest or EverQuest 2 and a lot of those games, and there was definitely a camaraderie for that, but as that started to wind down and I started to have kids and I couldn't like do raiding as much anymore, I was just video games weren't scratching the itch anymore. There was too much anonymity, and you log into some death match and you get called a noob, and people talk about your mother and all that other stuff.
Yep.
So,
oh yeah.
So I was looking out for for different things to do, and there was meetup groups, and there was we have a game store near me called Sci-Fi City, and they had they have board game meetups, and I was kind of looking to get into something like that, and but I was just too nervous to like go interface with people face to face after years of like being a PC online gamer, and X-Wing was what got me into it. And so I discovered Will Wheaton's channel, Tabletop, and he had a show, and he had Seth Green on, and they were playing X-Wing, and in retrospect they got a lot of the rules incorrect, but they had so much fun doing it.
Right.
I fell in love, and I remember watching that for the first time, thinking, wow, I need to do that. That's amazing. And I kind of went from there and met some people through there, started playing, and then I just wanted to watch more content. And I think there was only a single channel doing X-Wing content at the time, and they stopped. And I said, well, there's no more. Why? Like, I hit the end of the internet for Star Wars tabletop gaming content. It was really just X-Wing at the time.
Right. Yeah.
And so I started doing that a little by little, and it was really, really bad. If anybody is watching, if they go back and look at like my very, very early stuff, it was awful. Like, it was I didn't know the first thing about making content, but I just wanted to, so I just kept doing it. I just kept throwing meatballs at the wall and seeing which one stuck. And that's actually a really gross analogy, but you know,
Well, it's a
eventually.
common one. You
Yeah,
throw the spaghetti at the wall, see what sticks.
right. Except I was throwing meat. So spaghetti would have been cleaner, but I was throwing
Yeah.
big greasy meatballs at the with soaked in sauce at the wall, and I had eventually had a wall full of meatballs. And wow, I think I'm getting hungry now. But one thing led to another, and Armada got ready to come out, and I didn't want anything to do with it. And I'm like, I don't need another spaceship game. I can barely afford X-wing as it is. And it wasn't until I think maybe like 2 days before the Armada launched that I finally sat down and watched. I think it was a Team Covenant playthrough at Gen Con when they had like that first demo of Armada, and I was like,
I think I was actually at that Gen Con. I remember that.
yeah, it was. I mean, it was amazing. It was really good. It was like I was like, wow, this actually looks really good. I think I'm gonna go pick up a core set, and from then I was like, I played my first game with a buddy who kind of kept pushing me to get into it and pushing me to get into it. And after that first game, I was like, this is it. This is the game for me. Like, and so I bought like 3 core sets because I didn't, before even Wave 1 came out. I'm like, I've got to have them. Like, I wanted to play Empire. Well, I play everything, but I wanted to play Empire at first. I'm like, I can't just have 1 victory Star Destroyer. I need
Why not 3 victories, right? Exactly. And a bunch of TIE fighters. That's all you had.
That was it. They didn't have even the standalone expansions out yet before, at the time. So I was just like, I gotta have everything. And then so I started playing that casually, and then I started making some content on that. And I think it was around the time that I started taking Armada seriously was around the time that they had a Massing at Sullust tournament. I don't know if you remember this, but it was right before, it was a pre-release event for Wave 2, and the winners would get their choice of one of the Wave 2 expansions first. So you could win the Star Destroyer, the Home One, MC-30, or the Raider. And I went to one of those, and I had never played in an Armada tournament. I hadn't hardly played in any tournaments, and I ended up taking second, but the guy who won first wanted the Home One, and I really wanted the Star Destroyer. So I was like, I want a Star Destroyer before they're even out yet. I gotta keep playing this game. So like from then on, I took Armada like a lot more seriously, and then Legion came out, and I just started covering like everything Star Wars related. I covered Destiny when that came out, like its rise and fall, and then here we are.
So about what time throughout the years of you doing content on your channel did it really take off? Where it became where you're doing just part-time, it's just a thing to do, and you're like, wow, I can actually do this quote unquote professionally, and it kind of exploded. Was there like a moment when you realized that, or did it happen kind of gradually?
I kind of laugh that you think what I do is professional in quality, because I think it's very amateur. But no, I think I mean, it's more to your point. So, well, let me say that I don't do this full time. Even though I put out daily content, it's really just because I'm a maniac and I don't know when to stop. Like I work a full-time job. I have 3 kids, and I try to spend time with them too. And I stay up until midnight or even later almost every night trying to get like the next day's video going. So like I'm constantly going, and every once in a while I'll try and get like a couple videos done in one day. So a lot of times if you see like a build where I'm not on camera and I just do like a fleet build, like that was like when I look terrible. I'm not, but I'm gonna
turn the camera off.
I'm gonna power through like a couple of videos tonight so I can actually like rest for the weekend. So like sometimes that's a thing that I'll do. But yeah, I started going more full time. I think it was my first Gen Con, maybe 2018, somewhere around there. I started getting a lot more views and a lot more actual attention from developers, actually being able to get really good coverage, and realizing that, man, I should start going to more conventions. And it was, I think, a significant jump for me. But so that was really something. But it's definitely been gradual. It's been slowly but surely. And then I think a big turning point for me was, I hit this point where I hit a point very early where I earned like the ability to do monetization, and so it would run ads on my channel. And at first it was nothing, because I'd make videos for, I think my first year, I think I only got 1 paycheck like for the whole year, because it was so little. But I earned that really early because I played this song as one of my first ever YouTube videos before I even started making content, and it was like a parody song called a song called Amazing Horse, but it was like one of these little flash things by this guy named Weeble, and it was called Amazing Horse, and I played a cover on it on guitar, and it kind of went semi-viral, and so it got so many hits that it put me over some threshold, like, oh, you're a successful YouTube channel, here, you can do this, even though I'm like, but I'm not. I just was an idiot who has a crazy dog barking. Sorry about that. But
well, we might see one of my cats come across the screen, so we might have some animals on this. We'll see.
A lot, you know what? They're our furry friends, and they keep the force with us. Her name is Hera, as a matter of fact. So she's
very nice. She's good name.
Dog. Yeah, she's a good dog. But no, it's been very, very gradual, and it's been getting more. I've been taking it more seriously. I think maybe around the time that I launched Crabbok.com as a place to kind of host certain files. Like when I made the Armada AI system, I'm like, if I want to be able to make content for people to have, I need a place to host it, as opposed to just emailing out to people or hoping that it can stay stickied on the FFG forums. And of course, those went away. So
right.
It's definitely been gradual, but I'd say it really started to shoot up once I started getting coverage at conventions, and being able to cover things like when FFG would do their in-flight brief. I remember my first time I covered an in-flight brief, and I had like 1,000 people watching at the same time, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is it, this is amazing.
Right.
Of course that was great, because at a certain point they didn't cover it. I think that was the first year they decided they weren't going to stream, or they didn't used to stream their own panels, so the only way to get certain news was from other content creators. So I was just like, yeah, I'm gonna get this, and I'm gonna get
the foot in the door, right? Yeah.
And I got there early too, so I got like a front row seat, and I got like the last front row seat, and I'm like, nobody, these people know who I am yet, but this is where I stick my flag in the ground and then get arrested because there's carpet in here, and I just stuck a flag in the carpet. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, actually, I want to touch on something that you just mentioned, just going through the history of your channel, and especially with Armada, your AI system. I mean,
sure.
What I guess inspired you to make that, and like, what was the method of going through that, play testing it, etc.? Because it's a huge thing, or at least as far as I'm aware. I see people on forums all the time loving to use it. So.
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing that kind of gave me a hint for it was somebody had kind of come up with an AI system for the first edition of X-Wing. And I mean, I think there have been probably multiple versions of it, but they would run like in a browser, and they would just be like, if your ship is, at 9 o'clock of this ship, then it should do this, and and all of this other stuff. And I was like, oh, that's really nice, because I can just hit the button, it'll tell me what to do. And then like some friends of mine were playing there for X-Wing. There was a campaign for X-Wing where they would, it was a persistent campaign, but it was cooperative. Everybody would get one ship, and they would earn more things over time, and it would go up against this AI system. And the name escapes me, but it's incredibly popular. So of course, everybody in the comments right now is gonna be like, "You
probably
idiot!"
Know what it is.
It's the it's the thing. And I'm like, of course it's the thing. And I just of course, when you have to talk about something, your brain just decides to go on vacation. So
yes,
yeah. So I apologize to everybody who knows what the thing is, but I just can't think of the thing right now. But I remember that AI system, a friend of mine was trying to get me to play, and it had a lot of steps, and it was a little bit complicated. And I was like, I have enough that I'm thinking about when I play one of these games, trying to think about what I'm gonna do, and trying to remember all of my fleet's stuff, and make sure that that I'm doing this, I'm taking this action so that this dude can get the token that he needs to trigger this, which is going to fuel the whole fleet's thing and all that other stuff. I don't want to also have to remember all these other steps.
And Armada is far more complicated than X-Wing, so
it depends. I mean, I think that's relative to how well you have those rule systems. Like for me, I think X-Wing is more complicated than Armada, but that's because they had a second edition. So all the rules in my head are still 1.0 rules. So
that's new. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and when they changed so much that like a lot of that stuff I had a hard time flushing out. And so whereas Armada, with the 1.5, it was actually very, very much slimmer, kind of streamlined set of changes, and that's great. But so I wanted basically an AI system that would be simpler and that wouldn't have as many steps. I've seen I've seen some really complex AI systems, and back when we had the Fantasy Flight forums, I remember seeing at one point there was an Armada AI system that somebody else had done, that was more accurate, but also I guess maybe I would even say maybe a better AI system, but it was also a little bit more complicated. I said, well, what if I just, came up with one that would be easy, like what would I like to play?
Right.
And what if I came up with something that was maybe dumber, but made up for it by being extremely simple? So it's very, very accessible. So anybody can just, hey, you know what? Just pull a card. It's going to tell you everything you need to do. And that's kind of what I came up with. And then some people realized very quickly, like, hey, we don't even have to pull a card. We can just print the one sheet and just roll a die and reference the card note, because the die, I think there's 8 cards or 10 cards. So you roll a D8 or a D10 or something like that. Because I've also done one for Legion, but they have a different number of cards between them. So I get the numbers mixed up. But the idea is the same between both systems, as a matter of fact, that you just either roll a die or print out the cards, sleeve them, and just pull one, and it tells you what to do. And it's had some mixed reviews. I think but I think the motivation for it was COVID. We were all locked down, and especially at the start, I didn't know how I don't know when the next time I'd be able to play another human being was. And I'm like, well, shoot, I'm in the business of trying to get battle reports out, and that whole well is going to run dry really quick, like when nobody has anything left to report. And so I figured here's and I know people are playing on like TTS and Vassal and stuff, and I just have never been able to wrap my head around that, and so I'm like, well, let me come up and do something different. And I had actually plans to play test it a lot more. When I first published it, I had only played one game with it, but so I rushed it out early so people could have something. And then I eventually went back and I've kind of updated it. I think maybe 2 times over the past 2 years. So it's got a little bit more flexibility. Like, one of the things you can do right now is if the AI just does something stupid, that you just say no. It would never just fly a Superstar Destroyer off the board on purpose.
Right.
All right. You like 3 times a game. They call it like the golden rule or the elastic clause. You can just say no. Here's what it would do, and you can basically override the card 3 times a game if you think like it's just if it's a good reason, because it's supposed to be fun. Like, the whole idea is it's not there to train you to win tournaments. It's there for you to maybe test out a build. Like, hey, does this new combo, does this new commander work with these upgrade cards, and can I fly my ships correctly so that they stay in range of the effects and I don't bump, and will these mechanics work? And it's a great way for you just to test out ideas and
having an opposing force going against you. So
exactly. So you can actually see like, oh, what's it gonna be like when I start actually getting shot. Oh, and by like 3 or 4 ships at the same time, can it hold together? And because the AI will make some mistakes and sometimes do things that are not efficient, because it's a simple AI. To get more efficiency, you have to get a little more complicated, and that's why I wanted mine to stand out and being very easy and accessible. That I just generally suggest giving the AI a handicap. Give them an extra 50 to 100 points, and then if you win, then give them an extra 50 points the next game. And then if you win that one, then maybe try and give them an extra 100 points, and find the spot that's like the sweet spot for you. And so it's very flexible and adjustable too.
Well, I think that's a really great resource because, yes, there is Vassal and TTS, but for those that just want to get their models out on the table,
yes,
so they can play with their actual models that they bought. No, I think it's a good alternative whenever you can't actually go out and play with other people.
Absolutely. And I think right now there's a lot of people, and we've always had homebrew, and I think homebrew can be a really fun thing. But at the same time, and I know that this kind of touches on a lot of other things, but there's a lot of people that have like their favorite ship from Legends or something like that, but not everybody agrees. That's one of the problems with homebrew is like, look how many Lucre Hulks are out there, look how many Dreadnoughts are out there, right? But if you make some ship or you get something 3D printed or whatever, you wanted to fly against this, or maybe you make a whole Chiss Ascendancy fleet and you want to fly against them, but who's going to want to play your homebrew? Because hey, every one of us can be a ship designer, and I promise you they're all going to be terrible,
Right.
So but if you want, but that's an opportunity for you to play against homebrew as well without having to subject somebody else to your terrible ship designs, or your fantastic, or people who don't recognize your true genius.
Right.
You know? So yeah, there's a lot of different things you can do with it, and I've even run it. It's a great way to run it and test out Clone Wars when that first came out, and I still couldn't play against anybody. Or also certain scenarios I've been able to do too, because I did like for fun, I did like a Deep Space Nine scenario when I got that WizKids model, and I set up the big space station, and I was like, you know what if we wanted the space station to be like a 400 point unit on this other team? All right, let's do like 800 points versus 800 points. And so there's a lot you can do with that.
I think it's really cool. And speaking of playing in person, one of the things that when I first got into Armada, it was years ago. It was just, as far as battle reports, because I like watching Armada battle reports and 40K battle reports. Sure. For Armada, it was just you and the Masters of the Fleet guys down in Australia. Great guys. Yeah. And I noticed that, obviously COVID, of course, is, sure. But I've noticed that obviously because of that, the amount of bat reps you put out has reduced. Right. Are you planning on trying to do more? Like, I can't remember your friend's name that you usually do like your long form ones with. So
I actually have one alive. So one of the things I do, not to plug too much, but I do send some of my patrons get early access to battle reports, and I have one that's live right now, where it is kind of the long form, and I've done the long form a couple of times, but it's usually a little bit harder to do. It's harder to do at a store because I have to bring equipment and have to set up, and then sometimes there's power issues and things like that. So it's
a lot more noisy there, I've discovered, when I film my bat reps at a store.
sometimes there's music playing, and
so you gotta be careful with
music. If there's music, they'll get you. Yep. Yeah. That has happened also, and so that's all these. There's so many extra hurdles that people don't realize that we have to jump through. And by the way, you have actually really nice bat reps. By the way,
thank you.
I think you do have a really nice touch and a very good take on the different angles and stuff that you're able to provide too. So very cool. Kudos to you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I've been really enjoying the past 6 months. It's been a fun hobby so far.
Absolutely, it's and it's fun creating too.
Yes,
and finding your niche.
Yes,
but I do.
Scratch an itch I have not been able to do in a long time. I'm a theater guy. And I haven't been able to been on stage in like 2 years because of COVID. So I've just been dying to do something creative. So this has actually been helping scratch that itch big time for me.
That is very cool. No, that's awesome. And I think a lot of people can find through tabletop gaming that it fulfills something that they've been missing too. But
yes.
But to answer your question a little bit more about the long form bat reps, that is something that is coming back into the mix. The next Armada bat rep I have is kind of a hybrid. And it's not the full battle report, it is the full battle report, but it's sped up. So I think everything is like ×3 speed, and I'm just narrating the entire battle report instead of actually doing the in time. So I'm like, so here you see, blah blah, and that's something that, and I know you do some of that, and I think it's definitely a thing that some battle reports will have from time to time, and I've done it once or twice, but I don't do it that much because it's a lot more work to record everything and then go back and remember all the highlights,
everything that happened, and then to
in order. And you're like, and here he takes this huge shot, and oh wait, no, that was the shot that he missed. Oops, well, what happened next? So that's something that's coming, and also it coincides with the second Secret Fleet battle report, and that's another format, and I think it can be a really fun alternate format, especially moving forward, since we're getting ready to kind of enter a large chunk of time without any new content, which I know is something we'll probably talk about here in a minute, but alternate formats I think are a really cool thing. And so there's this alternate format I came up with called Secret Fleet that kind of references, I know you like Thrawn, right?
Oh, yeah.
So that references some of the Chiss Ascendancy books, or the Thrawn prequels that are out now by Timothy Zahn, and that basically deal with when two fleets approach and they're kind of scanned, like there's a cruiser and a heavy, and you don't know their capabilities if you're meeting them for the first time. You don't. Oh, you can see like, well, I can tell that that's a Corvette, so that's probably a fast ship, and I can see that that's a heavy cruiser, so that's probably that could be the flagship. But you don't know any of the upgrades that are on there, and so basically all your upgrades are hidden. And once it's time to trigger something, that's when you flip it over, and that's when it becomes
that is really cool. That's actually a really cool idea.
It's a super fun format.
Yeah.
And it requires, all it requires is that you play with somebody that you trust, because they could have something that says they can't attack twice or something like that. Like you could have slaved turrets on a ship where like, oh, it was secret, oh, I attacked twice, and so you have to, it does require
you want to play with exactly. And it's actually very similar. That actually is giving me an idea just for me and my friends around here, potentially to maybe rip you off there a little bit.
Oh no, but, please! I have a thing on Crabbok.com. I have like a write up of it. I think I'm going to attune it a little bit because I put some unnecessary caveats on there, and I'm like, it should just be like hide all upgrade cards and flip them over when it's time to use them.
Right.
And if something is mandatory, then you just have to flip it over when it matters. But yeah.
A game that my friends and I we still like to play. It's BattleTech is one of our favorite games we like to play, and they have a double blind system in that, where like sometimes we don't even put the models on the table. We write down what hex they're in, and then you have to do scans to see if you detect them when behind. But anyway, that's just something that I think would be really cool to translate into Armada. I know that
it really is. And just to give you an idea of some of the things that you don't kind of jump out at you right away, is you don't even know how many squadrons your opponent has, because they might have rapid launch bays. And so like if you're going to a store to play that, I suggest you bring a box or a bag that you can kind of potentially hide extra models or minis in, because you're like, oh, this GR75 rapid launch bays, B-wings, ching, and then all of a sudden they launch in surprise, and it makes for such a cool thematic experience, and I really, really love it. And of course, it does require the honor system.
Yes,
and then
of course,
if you have all your cards stacked underneath something, like I put mine underneath the ship card, but then again, if you're really trying to be super competitive with it, I can be like, whoa, you have a lot of cards underneath that. So you can put dummy cards under there too, or you can just have them all in a box or something like that, as long as if you find a way to do it. But it's a super fun format, and I thought that would be really good for a narrated battle report. So this way I can be like, and what he doesn't know is I have spinal armament. So even though he thinks I can't shoot him out the rear, once he puts himself in my rear arc, I flip over spinal armament, and here comes the, and so that's, so I thought that worked well for a narration, and so it was pretty interesting. But yeah, so that's the next one that's coming. But I'll probably continue to do a blend. We've been doing like monthly tournaments at one of my local stores, and it's and it's been, it's a pretty wide open store. They definitely require masks, and so because I'm in Florida, and it's still crazy. We thought we were out of the woods for a little while, and it's not, but we're still trying to get tournaments going from time to time, and it's great. But I'll do tournament reports where it's just a little bit, just the highlights. Like, here's how this fleet went against a squadron heavy fleet, and here's how it went versus an MSU type fleet, and I think that's and that's also just it's just a different take. It's just different types of content.
I remember
throwing more meatballs at the walls.
Yeah, and speaking of that, just I remember right before the Lone Star Open happened, you had released a summary report of a tournament where you brought a Super Star Destroyer out of nowhere and wrecked face.
And I felt bad. So when I first started going, because these tournaments started up before I started going to them. A buddy of mine, Chandler, who runs the Brace for Impact channel.
Yes, yeah.
He started up the tournaments again, because we were going to the same ones, and I used to kind of had kind of started like a group at a local store, but this store closed down, and then he kind of the torch, I guess, passed, so to speak, and so he started it up again, and he took some great initiative. And so once I started going, I felt like the new guy, and I'm like, all right, well, I know I sometimes can play real competitively, so let me just try. What, I think a Superstar Destroyer is going to do terrible, but like the first time I was going there, it's like, nobody's bringing these. A lot of people are flying Clone Wars. All right, let me bring something like an oldie but a goodie from the past. And and it did. I think a lot of people are, there's new people coming into the hobby all the time. So I think some people had never even seen a Superstar Destroyer before.
Yeah.
And so I felt really bad because like one dude, like I killed almost his whole fleet in one activation. It was like 3 shots,
man.
3 kills, and then I rammed another ship, and it was just like, oh man, I feel like, and you can tell the look on somebody's face when they're just crushed from like that turn 2 loss. Like it was turn 2 and it's over.
Man.
And I'm like, dude, I'm so sorry. Do you want to play again? Like I know the game is over and then like it's gonna go, we record our scores and stuff, but like do you so it's so like I feel really bad. Like I didn't expect it to do that well. I thought it was like, I'm like, this is gonna go down in flames, but I want to give it the good old try, and it did. I think that, and the big thing was it just people weren't expecting it, and people didn't know how to. So that doesn't feel like a true victory, but it does make for excellent content and excellent talking points.
It did, and it was actually kind of funny because just a couple of days after release that video is when the Lone Star Open happened in Texas.
Right.
And I was there at that, and a guy from around here that I didn't know was from around here, but he brought an SSD, and when he walked in, everyone was like, "Oh wow, okay, so this will be a, I hope I get him. It'll be easy." And he actually pimp slapped everybody until the final table and took second.
Oh, nice,
and it shocked everybody. It's like, what, an SSD just kicking everybody's tails out of tournament? What is this? But it was one of those things because nobody was expecting it.
Right.
And if you're not used to going up against an SSD, it can be very dangerous if you're not used to it.
I thought honestly that while some of the changes to an SSD were hurtful, like gunnery teams being changed.
Yeah.
I didn't think that was going to actually affect me because in my experience, my opponents, even when I could fire 3 times out of the front arc, my opponents never put 3 ships in the front arc.
Right. Who's going to do that?
No, they never left me that opportunity. So I'm like, I don't think that's going to have any effect on me whatsoever. And I would guess technically there was one time where I had like a long range obstructed shot that would have been a 3rd shot, but it was not a big deal. I would have only gotten like 3 dice, and then they had evades, so I wouldn't have got I don't care, losing that. But definitely when I started playing an SSD, I found that if you run Gergerod and Ozzel on there, Ozzel as an officer, and getting that turn 1 move, even if I just deploy first and you totally deploy around me, I can counter you by just getting a turn 1 move, before I even start, and a 2 yaw, and then a move again with 2 yaw.
Just as needed. Yeah. It's incredible.
Yeah.
And if you're not used to it, you are surprised by how much that butt swings out on that SSD, and you can reposition yourself.
I was fortunate that I didn't have to go up against Sloan though, because I did go up against some squadrons, and I was just able to take out the carriers before the squadrons got me to half points. But I mean, in that tournament, I didn't lose a single point. It was 2 10-1s. It was bad. So
Sloan is pretty decent kryptonite to an SSD, because if you get rid of the braces, then your SSD is pretty much done.
Pretty much. There's not a whole. I mean, unless you're running tag, but if I'm running an SSD, it's not going to be tag.
Yeah.
But yeah. So that is that's kind of a big part of it. But we had a great time, and I like doing stuff like that. I like just bringing it's the beauty of having our tournaments are just 2 rounds long, so it's kind of like casual play plus. I would suppose.
Yeah.
And that's just a great way to test out a list, and you get to play 2 different opponents, and it's gonna be 2 different probably 2 different archetypes or 2 different factions, since we have 4 factions now. So I mean, the game's in a good spot, and it's a really good spot to start doing tournaments, and even local, just 2 rounds. If you're in a local area and you're like, I don't know if we can get a whole tournament going, just do 2-round tournaments. It doesn't take all day. You're not going to get exhausted. You're not going to be on your feet all day. You're going to get 2 games in, and it's a great way to get the community, coming out regularly.
Yeah, and you can do those more often, far easier.
A lot more often. Yeah. It's just a great system, and it's a great game.
Well, I suppose we might as well get to to talk about where Armada is currently. I'm sure there's people that are subscribed to my channel have already seen my reaction video when I talked about it, and I'm sure they've probably watched some of your reaction videos. But you want to give maybe another brief history, because if as much as you want to disclose what you're talking about me before we turn the cameras on.
So I've gone through. I've gone through a lot of different emotions and opinions on this. I think there's different. So let me back up a little bit. There, we got the news. AMG has no Armada product in development currently, but they will still reprint the game, and they will still support organized play, and that has a lot of good and bad to it. But initially, it hit me like, this is the end. This is the this is the Galactus flying in and saying, oh gosh, what's the big dude's name? And now I see him having another one of those moments. He's the giant, the eater. There's just Galactus is coming.
Yeah, the devourer of worlds.
So our Silver Surfer's coming in saying, heralding of Galactus, saying, here comes Galactus. And so that's how I interpreted that. And when that came, I was already having a really bad day. I've had some internal stuff going on, and I haven't talked to too many people about it, but it's kind of tangential from this. So I was already having a rough day, and then so by the time I saw that news, I had already suspected that something like this was coming for a number of reasons, and I kind of think I was in denial. I'm thinking like, no, they're gonna keep making it. They're gonna keep making it, and then all of a sudden and it was like, wait, they haven't made anything yet, and so I think that was the thing that hurt me is the timing. And even though it was honesty, it was like, boy, you're being honest at a really inconvenient time, right? Yeah. Because you've had the license for 9 months, and it's almost exactly 9 months to the day, so like close to a year, but you've had it for this long, and I had hoped that you would have at least started working on something by now.
Even if it's just writing stuff on scratch paper,
Right.
That's quote unquote development, I guess you're going to say, just ideas,
Yeah, even like kind of planning out a roadmap to me kind of sounds like development. And so there was, so to see that it was, it hurt, and I was hurting, and I was drinking. And in my infinite wisdom, I decided to just hey, let's just do a live stream because and I've been criticized by some folks for that. It's weird because I have a larger channel, and so I get met with a lot of told you so's, and a lot of you need to do this, and you need to say that, and you have a responsibility to this, and I have to please this person, I have to please that person, and I have to please this person. But at the end of the day, I was just like, let me just, I need to just do what's right for me. And that involves making mistakes sometimes. And, so.
And I took that live stream because I watched it a couple of days after the fact, that was just your processing.
Yeah, I was definitely processing.
Just processing and just talking it out. Because I went through the same thing.
Yeah.
But I wasn't in a position. It was actually fortunate for me. I was actually not at home. I was at Planet Comic Con in Kansas City. Mm-hmm. So I had no means to just suddenly just jump on to YouTube and say something. But man, I went through a lot of emotions the day that I found out, the first day I was there. And I was very fortunate that I couldn't make a video. I had a couple of days to process.
I think anybody who I think a lot of people who have things to say may have also had their own first reaction. And one of the big differences, they don't have a camera turned on them. Now, granted, I did that. I turned on the camera, but that's also kind of baked into who I am at this point. I'm just like, I need to talk to somebody. I'm gonna let me talk to everybody. Everybody's my friend, right? So I did that. I turned it on, and I just went live, and so I've recently kind of revised my statement. I wrote up an article on Crabbok.com, and it's a lot more optimistic now that I think I'm come through the tunnel, and I can see the light, and I can wait a second. We have a great game already. We just got 2 new factions. New starters. Starters were something we definitely needed more of too. And we got a whole nother wave after those 2 new factions got their starters. So we got 4 new ships for 2 new factions and squadrons for each of them, and an upgrade card collection, something we desperately needed,
and the rules revision that we needed.
Yes, and a points adjustment. Yeah. So not only do we have 2 new factions with tons of new stuff, we've also got everything from the first 8 waves of the game retooled, right? Like, so you've already got like 6 years worth of content like that you still need to go back through and like, hey, have you run Tarkin in a long time? He's a lot cheaper now. Why don't you try him again? Hey, have you run Garmbel Iblis? He works totally different. Well, not
he's
totally
actually
different.
Good now.
Yeah. Well, so. Careful how loud you say that. I know some people who
good-ish.
there's people who liked him very much before, and
really,
and, you know,
okay.
yeah, Schmitty won a Gen Con tournament with Garm back in the day with the dumpster fire build. But yes, you know, there's definitely a lot of old content that is now has new life breathed into it, and a lot of people suddenly forgot instantly, and I was one of them for a moment there. You know, again, I'm not throwing stones at anybody, but you know, and it's okay to grieve, it's okay to be upset. And so, like, in my Discord, I kind of let people, you know, like, say what you want, you know, it's okay, you know. And even on like the Armada Facebook group, you know, there was somebody like, hey, do we need to crack down on this? I'm like, let's give them a few days, you know, get it out of your system. You know, get the memes out there, get it out. But now let's look to the future. And right now, the future is we have a lot of game left to play. There's a lot of combos that probably haven't even been discovered yet. Not to mention, Wave 10 brought a lot of new cards in, and a lot of those can work with the Empire and the Rebels. Like an ISD2 can salvo like crazy.
Oh, I love it. I love salvo on ISD2.
So much new stuff for all 4 factions. I feel like we've got at least 2 years worth of like new discoveries ahead of us right now, because we were already set to only have you know, 1 new ship a year on average. We were kind of in that mode when the SSD came out. It was like Rebels didn't get a new ship for 2 years, you know. So yeah, we're kind of already in that mode. We're you know, we can play it slow. We're very good at playing it slow, but we've just got so much. Don't forget where we were before we got this huge influx with the Clone Wars, you know. And so yeah, it's absolutely cool. And we had you know, there was just a rules reference guide put out for Star Wars Legion, because there's you know, there's a lot of Legion in the pipe already when they came over from FFG to AMG, and AMG had to put out this rules reference guide, and they made some mistakes in it, and they had to make a revision, and then there were some mistakes in the revision, and then they had to make another revision. I think after 2 like revisions of this rules reference update, I think they finally got it right. And that just kind of goes to show you, like, these games are all still new to them too. So maybe it's a good thing they're not making Armada content just yet, right? I think they probably need to take some time, and they need to start playing and start coming into some tournaments. You know, like send some of their people down to to Adepticon, you know, in 2022. You know,
or the Las Vegas Open. I mean, Frontline is actually picking up Armada now, which is great. So on their events.
Yeah. So I think they need some exposure. I think they need some time to absorb the game, to digest where the game is, and come up with, like, hey, what are some of the holes that need filling right now? You know, I don't even know if they're really in tune with that just yet, and so it's going to take time. But I don't, you know, they didn't say they're canceling the game, and they're keeping it supported. They're keeping it in print, and being in print is very important.
Very important. Yeah. And that'll help with people wanting to get into the game new, and hopefully discourage scalpers when you have these supply shortages. So
absolutely, and it's going to be a hard thing to get stuff reprinted. There's global shipping problems. Luke Eddy, who was the Star Wars lead over at AMG that got let go recently, he just actually, you know, kind of went on a little a tweet storm just recently, as a matter of fact, talking about like the prices of games, and it shed a little bit of light on that Armada was priced appropriately when it first came out, but we've had a lot of inflation since then.
Yep, inflation's a thing.
It is definitely a thing, and through COVID, we've seen a lot of explosions of inflation. And so a game that was already had like kind of thin profit margins that kept shrinking and shrinking and shrinking, it kind of makes sense that, you know, it's probably one of the most expensive games to produce, having pre-painted minis that are already pre-assembled also, and then they're also large,
as big as they are. Yeah.
So it's not cheap to produce those, and then they take up more room because a big ship has to have a lot of packaging, so you can only fit half as many in a shipping container that now costs like an extra $20,000 per shipping container, and so it's just crazy. So like, I think honestly, at some point AMG is gonna, you know, maybe they need just to let enough time pass, so this way when it comes back, they're gonna say, okay, we're bringing it back, but look, prices are gonna go up 50%, and that's you know, that's just a guess. Don't quote me on that, because I'm paraphrasing what may need to happen.
Right.
And that may need to happen at some point. And it's not even just greed. It's just the cost of materials, cost of plastics go up, cost of shipping is through the roof. And I think that's one of the reasons why Armada may have been paused, is that it's less profitable to, create new stuff right now. So let's just hold on. Maybe when things get cheaper, we'll be able to make more profits. It'll be more justifiable to go into it, and that'll also give them time to learn the game better too.
Yeah, I suppose my biggest sticking point that has actually stuck with me is the method of delivery of their announcement. 3 lines of text and basically a tweet isn't a way to announce something like that. I feel like even if they would have just done a short little video explaining the situation, right. And just saying, hey, this is what's going on, this is what we need to do before we can actually get back into developing new content for Armada. I just feel like that would have been better than just saying, here you go, and then everybody just loses their minds.
I agree with you, and I think that there's still a chance that they'll do that. I think the reason for their timing is at the end of this month, or probably any day now, they're going to be publishing their schedule of events for the mini extravaganza 2021, or right. The fall mini extravaganza, whatever they're calling it. And I think that's going to be their big time to talk about stuff like this. I hope that they will take some time, and hopefully like a whole block, maybe a live stream, to discuss, maybe not just Armada, but also their plans for X-Wing, because that one very well could be next, or maybe not. I don't know exactly. I know that there's at least product in the pipe that was developed under FFG.
And that's what all of this is, for those that don't know. I don't think AMG's actually produced anything yet for Star Wars. They're just like caretakers what FFG has produced.
Correct. Now, and it takes about 18 months to 2 years or so on average from conceptualization to street date. So you're looking at a huge time cycle to get something like this created. So Legion's in the best spot, because Legion had a full 2 waves in the pipe when the AMG switchover happened. So there was a whole lot of stuff ready to go. So AMG's like, hey, you know what, we can. That's one of the reasons you're seeing so much more updates from them with of course Marvel Crisis Protocol, and then also Star Wars Legion. A little bit for X-Wing, because there were some things that were developed. You still have the Razor Crest is still coming. They teased that back in March, I think they did the last mini extravaganza. So I would expect them to talk about that coming up, but Armada didn't have anything, and that was pretty clear. Now it's abundantly clear. Yes. Right? Yeah. Now it's official. Even though I'm pretty sure the Armada developed, and of course Asmodee let everybody go. We lost, those are lost Michael Gurnus, and
if you want to look at a villain, it's Asmodee, not AMG.
I would say it's not even Asmodee, because Asmodee also has their evil masters, which is that there's this corporate holdings company, basically an investment company that purchased Asmodee, and they're just trying to get Asmodee profitable enough to sell again. And so it's really the enemy is corporate greed, and that's
it always is, isn't it?
Well, I needed to go to a company that is more interested in making games, and that can always happen too.
Yes, I hope so.
They might break Asmodee apart and sell Atomic Mass Games to another company at one point, and maybe somebody maybe some rich guy buys Atomic Mass Games, and he's just like, dude, I love games, let's make games, and they're like, okay, everything's back on, folks.
Right.
And that's the best case scenario. Like that could potentially happen someday. We'll have to wait and see, but I think with all of the future planning, it's important not to lose sight of what we have right now. We have a great game that's just had a huge infusion of new content. And
it's one of the best rule sets I've ever played, as far as balance wise. Of all the games out there that I've played and that I've even just seen, there's so much imbalance and just power gaming and feature creep. Armada doesn't have that. It is a very solid rule system, especially since 1.5.
Yeah, it's not perfect yet. I still think there's maybe 1 or 2 more tweaks, but there's a few holes and things that were unfinished. there are some cards that reference abilities that aren't in the game yet. And
Commander
of course,
Wolf, anybody?
yeah. and we've got our traits that are on the Clone Wars cards that have almost no meaning at this point. And so there obviously was a roadmap ahead for Armada, but of course, with developers being let go, people who had the plans to work on these games, were slowly being laid off and fired, and it's hard. And so of course, what is AMG supposed to do when they were just happy making Marvel Crisis Protocol, and then of course they get a call from Asmodee be like, hey, you got 3 more games.
And it's Star Wars. Somebody people like more than Marvel.
Some people do it.
Yeah.
I'd say it's kind of one of these things, but yeah. And to be fair, like, I love Marvel Crisis Protocol. That's a fun game.
Yeah, my brother-in-law has it. We haven't been able to play it much, but that's one thing I really want to get into more, because I love superheroes and I love Marvel.
I mean, if you like having a new expansion or 2 every single month for the rest of your life,
that's what it looks like.
It's insane.
It's almost like Magic the Gathering, it seems like sometimes.
Oh yeah, a little bit. I mean, it's a good problem to have, because like I'm at the point where, like, I think the next wave, like, they're doing another Doctor Strange wave. I'm like, I've already got Doctor Strange, and I don't need anybody else that comes in that wave, so I'm gonna sit the next wave out. I focus on backlog of painting. I'm exploring some other games right now too. I just picked up an Age of Sigmar box, and so I'm like, let me get these all put together, and then I'm gonna paint some of these knights and stuff, because they look cool. And then maybe once they're all painted, I might learn to play. So
right.
So it's a good idea to have some other things kind of in the pipe, but still having fun with the other games. And one thing that that also kind of bugs me too is the amount of homebrew stuff that we see, and it's rough, because I know in my first video I'm like, if they won't make any more content, then we will, and we'll come together. and I still mean that, but that's a big if, right? That implies that, hey, what if they actually say, okay, Armada is officially canceled now? Then that changes things,
right?
But it's still supported. Or what if it's like 2 or 3 years and we still get nothing? Well, that changes things, because then it's like, okay, maybe now we've exhausted everything and we'll now have a really good idea of what would be good. That changes things. But there's so many initiatives going on right now of like, hey, I have a secret group, and we're putting together the next wave 11, and there's a lot of that right now. I've had a lot of messages and like, hey, can and I'm not interested in promoting a community wave 11 right now, because even if FFG still had it, FFG wouldn't release wave 11 for at least a year, if not longer. Right? So calm down, let's play what we have. That's what the designers intended, was for us to play wave 9 and 10, which is the Clone Wars stuff, and then get used to this, and then kind of earn the next wave by kind of exhausting all of the content that we have now.
Right. And I mean, homebrew's fun, just amongst your own friends, if you want, like, that
I love it. I still kind of come up with ideas all the time.
It's one of those, I don't know if we'll ever see it, but I'd like to have an Assault Frigate Mark 1, at least the model, or a Dreadnought for Katana Fleet, just to say, hey, I've got it, but just for fun. And if it ever comes out for real, even better. But
exactly. And it's, there's nothing stopping you. By the way, if you want the Katana Fleet, order some Katana Fleet prints, or print out some Katana Fleet, put them on another ship, and just run them. I would love to run a couple of Nebulons, like Akbar Nebulons, something real fun, right? Or a bunch of Architans for the Empire, conversely, and put the Katana Fleet, put Dreadnoughts, swap out the models, and just run my Katana Fleet, but they're using the stats and everything for Architans, and they're going to fly like Architans. There's nothing stopping you from just swapping out models. Run an Assault Frigate Mark II, swap out the model for an Assault Frigate Mark I. Get your ships in that way. That's a great way to do it. It's a great way to get all of the ships or your wildest dreams in the game. Just, put another ship on the base. It's really about the gameplay. And I think even if you want to go to a tournament and do that, if it's a low-level tournament, people probably be okay with you swapping out models.
Just as long as the cardboard matches. So
the cardboard matches, and it's not misleading, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't put an Architans on a Raider and a Raider on an Architans. Then you're being kind of a bad.
Yeah. Hey, I'm gonna chase a rabbit here, but going back to the very beginning of Armada, I don't know, I think I'm the only one, but were you confused when they came out with Wave 2 and it was an Assault Frigate Mark II Space Potato as opposed to the Mark 1? Because I was a huge fan of the Mark 1 for decades, and I was excited to see the Assault Frigate, and then I saw that, what is this fat thing?
So
what happened to my sleek little cool Mark 1?
I was definitely confused about the Assault Frigate Mark II because I hadn't played Empire at War, and so and I think that was like I'm not sure if that was its first appearance, but I think that's kind of the thing that got it a lot of recognition. And now, granted, I have played it since then, but
yes,
at the time I hadn't, and so I was like, "What is this?" Like I read some of the Legends books, but not all of the Legends books and stuff. Now, I was familiar with the Assault Frigate Mark One because I believe that was in the Force Unleashed video games, and so it was
also in the TIE Fighter and X-Wing games as well.
Right, yeah. And I had only played a little bit of those, but yeah. So at least Assault Frigate Mark One I had recognized, and so I was like, but not only just the design, but the name. I was like, well, why would they go with the Mark II first? Wouldn't you start with a Mark One and then the next wave do a Mark II?
Right, yeah.
So a lot of things about that didn't make sense, but I thought, like, well, and it was ugly, and it's funny because I look back now at the Assault Frigate Mark II, and I'm like, I think this is the best ship in the game. That also has maybe the ugliest model.
Oh, stat-wise, it's amazing. Oh, yeah. It's absolutely phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal.
And it fits in even better now with Wave. Like, so if anybody at home is watching and they haven't run an Assault Frigate Mark II, now's a really good time to do that, because with some of the Wave 10 upgrades, you can give this thing salvo easier than ever, and you can upgrade its salvo, and like you can power it up. It's got the right slots, it's got the right stats, it's got a good rear dice pool. It can get really deadly, and
it's got the great cost, so you can fit a lot more with it.
You can do a lot. Well, yeah, it's very flexible. It's one of the best all-around ships you're ever going to find in this game. So so I love that about it. It's a really good option if you want to swap out your minis. If you're playing me, please swap out the mini. I don't even want to see that thing. It's okay.
I had one of my commenters, because they know I hate it so much, they're like, next time you see it on the table, just put a brown paper bag over it so that you can.
Yeah, I know it's grown on me. I joke about its appearance, but it's certainly grown as a more of a ship I associate more with Armada now than anything else. So it's earned a place. It's earned a place on my shelf for sure. But yeah, that was initially one of the big pushbacks, is I did not like the appearance.
Well, before we get out of here, because we're getting close to an hour, I did want to ask you about something that got me really excited, just theory crafting. We put out a video, I think it might have been 6 months ago, a what if, kind of like Marvel's What If.
Okay.
What if some point in the future somebody gets the rights to Star Trek and makes Star Trek Armada? And Trek is my original nerd. And man.
All right, so we're gonna have to be here for at least 3 more hours because I love Star Trek, and one of the only reasons that I talk more about Star Wars than Star Trek is there's a lot better gaming content for Star Wars.
Unfortunately.
And I mean, you have Attack Wing for Star Trek, but I didn't want to get into that. And then at a certain point when I was thinking about it, it was like I did some research, and I guess they didn't play test, and everything's broken, and so the newest wave now always trumps everything else. And then the Borg came out, and nobody can beat the Borg, and then like the high level tournaments is just like they're all Borg players, and I'm like, all right, this doesn't sound like a game that I want to get into. So I don't count Attack Wing, but
neither do I, because in the model qualities, I initially looked into it as well, and the model quality is, I mean, garbage.
It's much low, yeah. Now we might not even feel that way if we didn't have FFG minis and stuff like that. But we do. So we have once you've seen like X-Wing and an Armada and stuff like that, you go and look at these, they're like, oh. And then, a ship like the Defiant is the same size as the Enterprise or something like that.
What is that? Come on.
Wait, no, that's not how this works. So I would like at least a sliding scale. So I have so many things, but my favorite Star Trek was Deep Space Nine, and for a number of reasons. But one thing that's really good about Deep Space Nine is that it it's about the Dominion War. And if you're looking to make a war game, what better series to pull the majority of your content from than Deep Space Nine? You have so many really, really, really good fleet battles in Deep Space Nine.
and they
a
really
wide variety of
expanded,
ships.
and they expanded the ship variety on a lot of the races throughout the entire Star Trek universe throughout Deep Space Nine.
Yeah, yeah. There's so much content. I think just Dominion versus Federation would be a good starter, or of course
starting point. Yeah.
Or you could easily do like Klingons, Romulans, and Federation as your starting three. Like that's all fine and good. I don't even know, you know, like there's so many different directions you could go with that. Cardassia has a lot of ships, but you know, there are the pitfalls of, you know, hey, Cardassia has like 2 styles of ship. They have a lot of, you know, and so like you start to run out of a little bit of diversity. Now I know there's Star Trek Online, and I think there's a lot of, you know, external stuff that have expanded on everything, but if you want to go what's recognizable and you want to print something and put it on the shelf, you know, your bread and butter is going to have to be the Federation. So I've thought about it a lot, and I think you do a game like that from a training room, like a Kobayashi Maru scenario. And so you've got this whole so your games aren't really fleet battles, your games are simulations, and so that's your excuse for having way more Federation ships than Klingon ships. Right, and Klingons actually probably have the second most amount of ships. They have a lot of, they have multiple birds of prey.
They're very well fleshed out, even canon-wise. We see on screen,
and especially with Discovery too, because you can get into those. And you know, not my favorite ship designs from Discovery, but it is more, and it really flushes. You're right, but there's so much more, and I think you do a lot of what Armada does. Ultimately, it'd be great if they could use the same system, because Armada really felt like Star Trek to me.
Yes, it's a great, that's why, and also Attack Wing felt too much like your fighters, not big ships maneuvering around. I mean, the Enterprise needs to feel like a Star Destroyer, and like the Defiant needs to feel like a CR-90 or something similar like that.
The Enterprise could be like a smaller, I think your largest ship should be like a Romulan Warbird or a Garrett, right? Yes, that's probably as big, but that could still be on the upper end of the large ships, and
like
if
a
you want
or something. So
exactly. And if you want to do huge, like if you want to do like that, what was that, the Scimitar, and
the Scimitar, maybe
you could do huge that way eventually, but that definitely doesn't need to be in like the first couple of years, you know? But yeah, there's so much flexibility there, and I'd love to do something like that. But then again, part of me says, well, let's go smaller in scale. Let's make an Enterprise only, you know, like maybe 2 inches long. And this way we can have, because this is one of my gripes about Armada, is I never really feel like I'm flying an Armada. I feel like I'm flying like a battle group, like I'm flying 3 ships. 3 ships does not an Armada make, you know. And so I mean, you can fly more than 3, but I never feel like I'm flying an Armada. If for me to feel like I'm flying an Armada, it's usually gonna be a 2,000 point game, and it's gonna take 8 hours, and then I'm not having fun by like hour 4. I'm like, we gotta finish this, and then I gotta put it all away. Oh, you know. So.
But my friends and I, we love 600 point games because you get a little bit more, and it doesn't take too long. That's what our favorite style to play is 600 pointers.
That's cool. And I love that. Ever since they came out with the sector fleet stuff, it's kind of improved the awareness of the higher point games. No,
but anyway, I just thought it would be fun just to maybe dream a little bit about a potential Star Trek game in the future. Maybe somebody with, like you said, maybe with money in the future, we'll see that, be like, maybe I can get the rights and I'll make a game, and then they will take all my money, because I won't even have to think about getting into that one.
So if they ever, anybody listening, if you come out with Star Trek and it's Armada style game, I will give you lots of free publicity. Lots of free publicity.
Absolutely.
I will have a new love. All right. Well, thanks for having me.
Yes, thank you for coming on and just chatting about your history and, you know, love of Armada and everything. And everybody that's watching, just to remind you about the giveaway I'm doing on my channel. Just leave a comment in the comments below for the giveaway from Admiral Tater's Ship Shop. No question for this one. That's coming up September 1st. I'll give the winner for that one. And if you haven't yet, I can't believe you haven't, but if you haven't yet, go check out Crabbok's channel. He puts out a lot of content, not just for Armada, but all things gaming. Check his site out, subscribe to it, and just check out all of his insight and his reveals and product reviews and that kind of thing. So.
Yeah, sounds great. Thank you.
All right. Well, thanks for watching, guys. And until next time, take it easy.